ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Erin Patterson has been found guilty of murder. Now that the trial is over, Mushroom Case Daily is analysing the trial's most damning evidence and tackling the questions we weren't allowed to answer until now. Plus, coming soon, a new series where we take you through every step of this case, how the poisoned beef Wellington was prepared, the day of the lunch, and the cover-up after. Find Mushroom Case Daily on the ABC Listen app.
Teenagers influenced by the so-called manosphere are bringing the misogyny they absorb online into the classroom. It's forcing some female teachers to leave the profession entirely. Today, the ABC's Siobhan Marin on her Compass investigation into where these disturbing ideas are coming from and how we can pull teen boys out of the rabbit hole. And a warning, this episode includes some confronting accounts of behaviour in our schools. I'm Sydney Peed. On Gadigal land in Sydney, this is ABC News Daily. Siobhan, for a long time now we've been hearing about the manosphere and how this online content is impacting teens, especially teenage boys. And while it all starts online, it's ending up in classrooms where teachers are at the coalface. And you've been investigating this and hearing some horrific stories from teachers. What have you found?
Well, in the last year or two, I started coming across more and more anecdotes from teachers who were saying that they were experiencing quite extreme misogyny in the classroom. This is not taking their authority seriously. This is making sexualized moaning sounds. This is calling them all number of names under the sun. So I wanted to dig into this issue, and as such, I've been able to speak with teachers, both primary and high school, around the country. And the answer is, it's shocking. One in particular said she was reading a creative writing essay from a Year 9 student, and it described an act of gang rape against her. You know, another teacher, she was substituting in a class. It was a Year 11 class. A boy asked to go to the bathroom, and then at this point, there were actually phones in the classroom. And a girl says, "Miss, he's just posted on Snapchat, he's wanking over you." And that teacher just said to me, I felt so paralysed. I'd never felt scared in a situation before, but you hear those words in your workplace and you're still meant to have a level of composure.
You spoke to a teacher called Meg. Can you just describe her experience?
Yeah, so Meg is the primary school teacher who's been called unfathomable names by kids as young as kindergarten. She's had kids sort of refer to their genitalia and sex acts.
I definitely felt kind of a bit scared, how do you know that? How at 10 do you feel so confident to be able to say that to an adult in a school context?
It's really overwhelming. And yeah, if it's coming from a kindergartner, that's one thing. But if it's coming from a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old boy who's already gone through puberty, that can actually be quite intimidating, even if you're in primary school.
So confronting and just so hard to imagine dealing with that in your workplace from children. And as you say, it's not your normal teenage backchat, right? So how are teachers dealing with it?
We are seeing teachers decide to quit, some of whom have only been in the profession for a few years. I spoke to a former teacher, Holly Cooper. She found that there were certain boys in her classroom who completely wanted to undermine her.
I remember the distinct moment that I thought, this is different. I was teaching a Year 8 class, geography, and a boy in the class said to me, "What do you think about third wave feminism? Do you agree that it's a failure?"
And they were sort of throwing these questions, just wanting to break her. Things like, hey, miss, the gender pay gap doesn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of baiting her for a response.
And then it just ended up being a thing of like, will you prove it? So I said, okay. So apart from everything else that I was doing with all of the marking and the lesson planning and everything, I was trawling through, all of this data just to prove a point. Because it was just going to be, well, miss, she's just making up lies, basically. Like, women are running the world. Like, we know that this is true.
And these are sort of direct talking points that we see from these online manosphere influencers, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. In that instance, it was a few years ago, and Holly worked out that these boys were watching videos from an extreme far-right sort of commentator, Milo Yiannopoulos, who used to be very popular on YouTube and other platforms. But sadly, a lot of boys and young men are being told through these influencers that either gender equality shouldn't exist or that it's tipped the other way and women have all the power.
As well as that, it's impacting the teenage girls, these boys' peers. Like, they're in the firing line for this sort of behaviour as well.
So I spoke with a high school student that we're calling Sarah. We've changed her name, her voice, and de-identified her. But she said that in her school there was a Snapchat group that boys in her grade were sexualizing girls, rating them, comparing their different bodily parts, and also taking photos of girls in the classroom.
They would take photos of girls' asses when they would go up to ask a teacher a question or write something on the board, and they would have their phones underneath the table. It just made me very, very angry to know that they thought that was okay and that they thought they'd be able to get away with it.
Okay, Siobhan, let's look at how these boys are falling down this rabbit hole, which is leading to this behaviour in schools. You spoke with a 26-year-old man, Jefferson, and he knows exactly how this happens because he used to be just like this. Tell me about that.
Yeah, exactly. Jefferson opened up about his own experience as a teenager. He felt super self-conscious, as a lot of teens do, and he found himself looking online for advice.
Like how to talk to girls, how to be like desirable, how to make people want you and stuff like that. And you find like these male influencers who say that they do want to help.
And sometimes the advice can be helpful initially, like eat healthy, clean your room, go to the gym. But then soon the algorithm starts changing and you get sent different messages.
And it goes down those type of rabbit holes and it starts going into like, it's not your fault. It's like, it's other people's fault. It's society's fault. It's women's fault. And then it's also your own fault because like if women don't want you, then it's like, it's because you're a beta, you're like not manly enough. You're too much of a nice guy.
Jefferson said it really started shifting his views about women and his relationships with women. He was just seeing them as opportunities to have a romantic partnership and not just, recognizing them as a human or a potential friendship.
And you've also been speaking with a youth educator, Daniel Principe. He spends a lot of time with teens and he's not surprised that we're seeing what's happening online exported into the classroom, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Daniel's work is really important because he's going into schools and he's sort of saying, hey boys, are you being served this content?
Who has seen something on socials where a man or a group of men are telling a woman or a group of women, get back in the kitchen, go make me a sandwich? Who's seen that in their social media?
They all put their hands up. The year 8s, the year 11s and 12s that I got to film with, they're seeing really problematic stuff. They're not necessarily searching for it. And yeah, sometimes some of the kids might be like, oh, it's just a laugh or, I know it's stupid. But there are other boys that it might implant in them in a different way. Research around the world has shown that if you log on to a social media site as a teenager, you're quite likely to be sent problematic content, quickly.
I don't think we should be surprised if these attitudes then leak out in what some boys do, because that is the diet that they've been served up. These toxic voices who, sadly, the algorithms obviously send more content to.
And the problem there is that adults and parents aren't seeing the same content because we're not being delivered that same algorithm. These billion and trillion dollar industries, big tech, are weaponizing this content and targeting young men, teenage boys, because they can make money off it. They can grab their attention, keep them there for longer, send them down a rabbit hole, and ultimately profit. And it's an issue that's obviously playing out across the world. We're seeing it spoken about a lot from the E-Safety Commissioner here in Australia, but I think many governments and societies don't know what to do, don't know how to rein in big tech in this regard. And we can't necessarily blame them for being given all of this material, being bombarded with problematic narratives about masculinity and the opposite sex. But obviously, we want parents and societies and schools and politicians to be providing a safety net and critical media literacy so that when the boys do see this type of content, they can straight away think, oh, well, I know that this is just stupid and they're trying to weaponize beliefs and profit off of me.
Teenage boys in particular can be so vulnerable to this kind of thing because, as you say, if they're suffering from low self-esteem or, you know, they're looking for guidance, they're really susceptible to this sort of messaging.
Exactly. And it's such a complex issue. Sarah, the high school student that we spoke to, makes the point that yeah, when it comes to gender-based violence or discrimination, it's not all men, but it's enough men. And so we need to focus on who are overwhelmingly the victims, which is women. But then also, you know, there are another perspective that we cannot alienate boys and make them feel bad about masculinity, not the problematic aspects that they might be sold on social media, but masculinity in general. We can't make them feel bad about that because if we do, we risk them going further into the manosphere and looking for that validation that these really toxic content creators are offering to teenage boys and young men.
Well, Jefferson, who we heard from, he managed to pull himself out of this rabbit hole. So how did he do that?
For Jefferson, it was his sister who played a really big role. Thankfully, they had a close relationship and he was talking to her about relationships and why don't these girls like me and maybe I need to be less of a nice guy. And his sister just said blatantly, that's dumb.
She would just catch me like saying really stupid shit. Like if I spewed back the talking points that I was given, she wouldn't give ground, essentially. I'd used to go to her for like dating advice, I guess, and I'd say things like, maybe I should just be like a little more like mean. It's just like, what are you talking about?
And so he started having this unraveling of such beliefs. And in the process, you know, it came around to see that these content creators who were spreading misogynistic sort of stuff were making him feel terrible. This misogynistic movement online is filled with hate. That's how it flourishes, through telling young boys that they've got a clear enemy, which is women and society at large.
You have a lot of people out there who probably love you, a lot of people out there who probably want to see you become a better person, and hate's just not the way. Hate's just not the way to do it.
Okay. So Siobhan, after all your conversations, what is your message to parents? What do they need to understand about what their children are going through and how hard it is to stop this cycle?
Oh, it was really sobering. I think it's just checking in on your kids and having a frank dialogue and saying, look, I'm not here to judge you. I just want to know what you're seeing online, what you're exposed to, and what sort of messages your friends are saying in the schoolyard as well. Do you hear these kind of things? Do you hear misogynistic jokes or rape jokes? And how do they make you feel? I think the kids need these multiple touch points and reminders of how they can navigate this complex world that they didn't be asked to be born into. They didn't ask for social media to have such dominance in their lives. Perhaps things will change with the social media ban, but we know that kids are very resourceful. It's not a simple answer, and I think big tech has a lot of responsibility to carry, but it's going to be human-to-human interaction that really supports boys and girls in dealing with this sort of content and the ideology that it's spreading.
Siobhan Marin is a presenter on Compass and host of the Quick Smart podcast. You can watch her Compass episode on ABC iView. This episode was produced by Cara Jensen-McKinnon and Adair Shepherd. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sydney Peed. ABC News Daily will be back again tomorrow. Thanks for listening.